So good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you may be joining us today. We are very excited to share with you an overview of a new research report that provides a snapshot of the size and health of the global regulatory affairs workforce. This groundbreaking report is free, and we encourage you all to download it at raps.org/2021 workforce report. You'll see the link on all of the following slides. To kick things off, I'd like to introduce the project team who will be sharing top-line data and findings with you today. My name is Amy Fisher, and I lead the membership marketing and business development teams here at RAPS. Also presenting today is Elena Kiria, founder of Elemed. Elemed collaborated with RAPS to co-produce this project and took the lead in data collection. Finally, I'd like to introduce Patrick Glazier, Senior Vice President of Research and Analytics at McKinley Advisors. Patrick and his team served as our analysis partner for the project and truly helped tie everything together. Thank you so much. Thank you both so much for joining. To kick things off, I'd like to turn the discussion over to Elena to share some background on how this project came about and why this is so important for the regulatory community. Elena?
Thank you, Amy, for the warm introduction. So yeah, what we're talking about here is something really groundbreaking. It's something that the industry has never seen before. This is a co-collaboration where we have put together an outline of what the market looks like in terms of the global regulatory affairs workforce across various different industries. Well, it sort of came about through a conversation that I had with Amy, where we identified the fact that this doesn't actually exist. So a lot of companies, a lot of people have instinct around what it's like. Regulatory people are hard to find. You know, there's a lot of regulatory people in one country over another, but actually there's no data that supports it. Government data doesn't exist. And when it does, it's old and outdated. So we came up with the idea of partnering on this project to be able to bring together a report that outlines what the workforce looks like with some really key and interesting information for you all. So this report is going to help you understand the size of the market. It's going to help you understand the opportunities available in the market, the major companies hiring skill sets of regulatory affairs professionals, key location hubs of where regulatory professionals are based, regulatory professionals' attitudes and approaches towards job search. And so you're going to be able to use this data in a number of different ways. You're going to use it to make better hiring decisions if you are a company that hires regulatory professionals. You're going to be able to understand the exceptional talent that you want to hire. You're going to be able to understand where are they actually based. You know, are we recruiting in a location that has plenty of regulatory talent where we need to be extra competitive, or are we recruiting in a desert where there's actually no regulatory talent available to us? So it will help inform your strategy when you're hiring and growing your team. If you are looking at this through the eyes of a regulatory affairs professional, it's going to help you identify where you stand in the market. And it's also going to help you understand some of the key players in terms of the companies that most hire regulatory professionals by country, by region, by location within each country. And that's only some of the top line ways that you'll be able to use this data. If you're looking at bringing talent in, if you're looking at L&D, or developing new people, bringing new people into the profession, you're going to be able to understand the types of educational backgrounds and the top educational backgrounds regulatory professionals have that come into the industry. So, Amy, is there anything that I missed there?
Nope, I think you've covered it all. I think that the other great thing about this is that, well, I know you're going to talk a little bit about the methodology. Why don't you continue? Talk about the methodology and then we'll jump in there.
Yeah, so I think one of the big questions that everybody, I'm sure you all have, is where did this information come from? And the one thing that we want to highlight is that thanks to technology, the vast majority of the information has come from LinkedIn. It's come from an advanced version of LinkedIn. And that is what we have used as our source of truth when evaluating the regulatory affairs workforce. Now, there's a couple of caveats that before we go into the data, I just want to highlight when we talk about LinkedIn. The first thing is that not everybody is on LinkedIn, and we're totally conscious and aware of the fact that not everybody is on LinkedIn, but it's the most renowned professional networking site in the world with over 740 million users and growing. Regulatory affairs is a highly educated profession. They may not be the most active out there posters on the platform, but the regulatory presence on LinkedIn is substantial. And as Generation Y and Generation Z start to grow up in the workforce and continue to advance their careers in the workforce, this online presence will continue to increase because of their digital fluency. So the other key thing that we're going to need to highlight here is that, we have to assume that a small percentage of people don't have LinkedIn profiles, but we do believe that this data is statistically valid and projectable enough to use as, a great guide to understand what the industry looks like. The other caveat I want to highlight is that when we're talking about regulatory professionals, we have included the people who are working in regulatory and another role at the same time. So people with blended positions, regulatory and quality, as well as regulatory and clinical. As what we find is that in some smaller organizations, these roles aren't standalone, but the responsibilities blend. And so people do have blended titles. So those profiles have also been included in this research. Amy, over to you.
Yep. The other thing that we wanted to point out is that all the data is broken down we followed the UN Geo scheme that looks at regions and sub-regions, so that we were standardizing the way that we report out the data. And then we have some further breakdowns of classifications in the US, where we use US Census data to align various regions. And you'll see some special showcases that we have in countries like Canada, where we look at specific provinces, and then in Europe, where we called out key countries and things like that. I think the other thing that's really exciting about this data is not only did we look at kind of the workforce, but we married this research with a research project that RAPS completed in the fall among regulatory professionals around the globe that looked at top professional challenges, preferences, and things like that. And pulling that all together, we really were able to bring the workforce to life in a way that I think is very meaningful. So let's get into some of the data. Patrick, if you want to give us an overview and a taste for what the report contains.
Thank you, Amy. My pleasure, and welcome all. So grateful to be able to share some of these top line findings for you. And I think what we cover today will give you a good taste of the data that you'll be able to find in the report. Like Amy and Elena, I want to encourage you to go ahead and download the report. It's going to be a great reference tool for you if you ever need to get your hands in there and just reference some statistics about what's going on in the marketplace. Honestly, it'll be a good read through for you too. So maybe you're in the position of wanting to know the concentration of regulatory affairs professionals in your geographic area or region. You can look up how your educational background might be in demand in your area or might be more in demand in another location. Or if you work for a company and you're having some trouble recruiting talent, this report might help to paint a context for that as well and give you some clues as to where else you can look. So please go ahead and check it out. There's lots of great stats and data in there. What I'm going to highlight for you today are some overarching points that'll give you the flavor of the report. If you look on the slide that we're displaying here, you'll see that global map. And this is the regulatory affairs profession globally. We have just about 100,000 regulatory affairs professionals divided between 6 different regions that we looked at. And the core regions, the regions where we found the greatest number of professionals, include Europe, North America, and Asia, roughly in that order. And then certainly you can see that there are pockets and clusters of regulatory affairs professionals in Africa, Latin America, and so forth. So really dispersed throughout the globe, but there are core centers right now. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that grayed out text box. These are professionals that are open to work. You heard Elena mention this as she gave her description of LinkedIn. This is where we start to see some differentiation really between the regions and some things that are pretty exciting and interesting to learn about and to put your head around. So open to work on LinkedIn, if you're not familiar with it, is a status that you can associate with your profile. It indicates whether or not you might be looking for new opportunities. Maybe you don't have a job at the moment, or perhaps you are looking for a new opportunity, even though you have a position. And if you pan up and down that gray box, you'll see there are some big differences from one region to the next. North America has about 7% that are open to work, and that trends all the way up to about 21% if you look at Africa and Latin America and the Caribbean. So if your company's in North America and you're looking to hire talent, you might find it to be a little bit more competitive of a market than if you're in one of those other regions where there's comparatively greater number that are really looking. This slide here shows you the breakdown. So this is how we classified regulatory affairs professionals throughout the globe. On the left-hand side, I want to draw your attention to that pie chart. Here we have about 65% of regulatory affairs professionals that are in the pharmaceutical sector, and then also a substantial portion in the medical devices sector and biotechnology. What's interesting about this is that it starts to change a little bit when you look at the regional breakdown, when you look at from one region to the next. So I also want to draw your attention to that bar chart on the right-hand side of the screen. Even though pharmaceutical regulatory affairs professionals tend to represent the bulk of the industry globally, it doesn't necessarily look that way when we look from one region to the next. And in fact, if you pan your eyes down to where it says North America, you'll see that we have almost an equal share of those that are in pharmaceutical as in medical devices, and even biotechnology has a fair share of the marketplace in North America as well. Europe tends to be fairly balanced, and then Asia has a good chunk of medical devices as well as pharmaceuticals also. It's really in the smaller markets, Africa, Latin America, for example, where there's really that heavy concentration in the pharmaceutical sector. So as we continue to absorb these statistics, re-release new reports, it'll be very interesting to see how the global or even local economies might shape the development of these areas. For example, if Africa grows and the market there increases, will we see a similar trend among diversification? Okay. So I want to take you through some statistics for just a couple of regions. Again, both Amy and Elena pointed out that the report is really divided to give you not just high-level statistics for North America, Asia, Europe, all of the regions, but also allow you to drill down into more granular statistics at that regional level and even sub-regional level. What I'm going to share with you today is very high-level kinds of details that'll just give you a sense of how some of these regions can vary between one another. And it really gives you a flavor for the context if you're a regulatory affairs professional in North America versus Asia and Europe. It might feel completely different. One of the things that we looked into was professional challenges. In North America, it tends to be sort of a good reflection of professional challenges globally. It's somewhere in between, for example, Europe and Asia when we look at the top priorities. For North America, the top priority is certainly to be able to keep up to date with regulatory challenges, but there's also a balance of some other concerns. If we were to look in Europe, for example, keeping up to date with regulatory challenges is not just the number one concern, but it tends to tower a bit over the number two, number three. Not so in North America, it's a little bit closer. Comparatively, in North America, work-life balance is a big challenge. And I think we all kind of feel this way, no matter where you are, too many things to do, not enough hours in the day. But that's one thing that's very top of mind for those who are in regulatory affairs in the region. Still, in Asia, it tends to be even greater of a concern. So the day-to-day working life, the types of things that you might be challenged with tend to be a little bit different from one region to the next. Where North America tends to stand out just a little bit is that it is the region where there's the least amount of satisfaction with respect to the profession and diversity, equity, and inclusion. So regulatory affairs professionals in North America are least satisfied that the field is diverse and inclusive enough, that it's done enough to make itself so. And that might be within the context of several high-profile cases of discrimination, not just in the United States, but also in Canada. So many of these factors are certainly very regionally contextual. Okay. If we drill down further into North America, we can look at our two primary regions within that larger region. First being Canada. Now, Canada is a really good reflection of data as it looks throughout the globe. The way that Canada looks, the globe kind of looks. For the most part, the regulatory affairs professionals in Canada are populated around the big provinces in the large cities within those. So Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia. Where Canada looks like the rest of the world, the regulatory affairs professionals breakdown is very similar. So I believe I quoted 65% of regulatory affairs professionals globally are in pharmaceutical. In Canada, it's 69. Those statistics kind of trend along with one another. It's also a really good reflection of the labor supply globally. So about 14% in Canada indicate being open to work. That's right in the middle of all of the regions. That trend again from 7% all the way up to 21%. And another thing that we looked at, another statistic that we looked at as a possible indicator of the labor force is the percentage of employees that are in entry-level positions. Well, Canada is right there in sort of the average for that as well. So many, as you read through that region, you'll find that many of the statistics, the working conditions in Canada tend to mirror how things are globally. This is interesting if you contrast it with the United States. So in the US, it's a little bit more of an outlier compared to the globe as a whole in a couple of different areas. For one, it's the most diverse region in terms of the balance of where professionals lie. 44% of regulatory affairs professionals work in pharmaceutical versus 35% in medical devices. Again, that's very dispersed compared to every other region in the world. And it is true that if you look within the United States, and you can do this when you read the report, that there are some definite trends as well. So if you look on the East Coast and the Northeast in particular, you'll find a heavy concentration of people in the pharmaceuticals sector. And you might be interested to do that if you work in the United States and really want to get a sense of where your cohort is and what the professionals look like that are in your area. But if you pan out to the West, you'll find that medical devices tends to be much more popular. So there's less of a dispersion in the United States when you look at it regionally, but as a whole, it's very well balanced. The other thing about North America that really stands out is that it might, in fact, be the most competitive region in terms of global talent. It has the lowest percentage that are open to work. So if your company is looking to hire, you're going to find those would be a little bit more challenging, perhaps, to find people that are actively seeking new opportunities. It also has the lowest percentage of professionals that are in entry-level positions. Now, we don't know exactly why this is. This could be that there's such a competitive labor force that it really, when you get into those positions, there is a lot of upward mobility, or it could just be something to do with the company structure. But it's another one of those indicators that sets the United States just a little bit apart from many other countries. Another region that we wanted to highlight for you today is Europe. Again, this is the largest region in the world with regulatory affairs professionals. It's particularly densely concentrated in Western Europe, where there are just about 14,000 regulatory affairs professionals. Europe is unique in, again, it has a very high focus on keeping up to date with regulatory changes as the top professional concern. It kind of dwarfs the other concerns that are top of mind for regulatory affairs professionals. There's also, it's interesting because when we look at the impact of the pandemic on the profession, one thing that we really wanted to learn about was how concerned are you that this pandemic will not just affect the regulatory affairs professionals' ability to get work done, to be able to do their jobs, but also that it might affect you personally, that you might get sick or your family might get sick. And Europe was the region out of all regions where that concern was a little bit more muted. So folks were comparatively more secure in that they felt, you know, we can handle this. We got the proper structure in place. We know how to handle these challenges.